there. We are back with Dr. Colleen Carroll, and she is an international speaker, very well versed and educated in the areas of literacy. And today she's bringing a hot topic, an important topic to us, all about screens and how our children are becoming addicted to screens. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Maria. I'm so excited to be here. This is definitely a topic I'm passionate about. And the more passionate I become, the more I hear how passionate parents are. So I think we're going to have a great chat today.
For sure. And I should tell you that I am part of a book study in our community. And this month, January's book was Wired by, I don't remember the author's name, but it was all about the research behind screen addiction. So I'm super excited to hear you speak. I will ask questions along the way, but let's just jump right into it, unless there's anything else about your business and your role that you would like to share with us.
Just that I've been in education for 20 years and really studying literacy as an educator. And that was my original passion and still is. And so in the work that I do, I really try to bring literacy and infuse it, reading for kids into how to help parents with screen time so that they can use books to help kids better manage screens at home.
And we actually met because I'm also a children's book author. And a couple years ago, I interviewed you for a parenting thing. So thank you again. Now, before we jump in, I should tell everyone that you do have a free offer. And one of my teammates, Mandy, will be posting in the comments below. But it is a free quiz, Is Your Child Addicted to Screens? So that will be going out. So anyone tuning in will have the link below. So let's jump in. Colleen, tell us what is happening to our children today.
Okay, sure. Well, there is no parent, I don't think, in the whole world, more or less, that doesn't have, isn't dealing with screens in the home. Whether you have a child who is 1 to 2 years old, screens are in their lives, all the way up through when the child is no longer in your home and outside, 21, 22, 23, still young brains, and malleable, but has potential for screen addiction. And so this has been a great opportunity. I'm so happy to get in front of parents to share some ideas that I have, and also to talk about a little bit about how to know if your child is really in danger of being addicted, or what I call pre-addicted to screens, which would be right before they're kind of all in. And it's an opportunity at that moment to decide that you want to do something pretty drastic about it. So I just want to point out that the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that for under 18 months, children who are under 18 months, they should have no screens at all unless they're doing like a video chat with grandma or grandpa. And that is a new recommendation from them. They've actually changed their guidelines in the past year and a half. Because a lot of young kids were on, 2 years old playing with iPads a lot, and that has become problematic for them. We won't get into all the details because of our time on that, but they're also recommending that children 2 to 5 years old are on for no more than an hour a day. And one of the issues I have is they don't really have a strong recommendation for kids over 6, and they leave that to parents' discretion. And I like to say that I would not have them on more than an hour a day over the age of 6 too in the home, because of how much screen time kids are getting in school these days. So lots of children in classrooms are on screens in school, whether it be games for math, vocabulary, practicing, spelling, and so on. There's a lot of screens happening in the daytime.
And in the book Wired, I did read that school-age children, ages 6 to 10, their average amount of time is 4.5 to 5 hours on screens.
A day.
Yeah. Per day. Now, I know I'm only with my school-age children about an hour and a half before school, and a couple hours, maybe 3 hours after school, 5, 6, 7, about 3 hours after school before they go to bed. Mm-hmm. So between school and home, like 4.5 to 5 hours, that is a lot of our waking time. So I just wanted to share, I did read that in that book.
Right, absolutely. And it does differ depending on the school. So some parents are, if you opt to send your children to a Waldorf school or a Montessori type school, they don't have that same type screen push. But a lot of school districts are buying kids iPads or Chromebooks for them to actually have and take home. And so there's a lot more opportunity for those children who have a very tech-forward school district to be on screens. And so I also want to clarify that a lot of parents will say to me, well, they're educational games, so I don't have a problem with that. And I would agree that educational games are more higher quality than, let's say, video games or random YouTube videos or Snapchat, let's say. But there's still a few things that are problematic, which is lots of blue light coming at your child, which at the very least increases irritability and sleeplessness. But in addition to that, games are games in terms of their addictiveness. So whether it's a math game or World of Warcraft, they still have that instant gratification feature and that point building feature and gamification feature, which really causes the addiction to screens, that thing that makes kids want more and that makes the brain want more. And so I would caution that just because it's educational doesn't necessarily mean it's forever safe.
We are talking a psychological issue here. Like, we are talking the brain, and it's like a hormone that it produces, that excitability, like that you constantly want. It's almost like a drug.
It is very much like a drug. In fact, the research through brain data and brain MRIs show that the frontal cortex of the brain lights up when you're on video games in the very same way that a drug addict's brain would. Let's say on something like heroin, where it's that instant gratification, that feel good now in the moment, and that the brain right here in this part decides it wants more and more of it. And so it sounds crazy to liken it to something like heroin, and I'm not saying it has the same effect, but it does have this, it goes to the same place in the brain, which creates that desire for more and which does create an addiction. And that's when parents will start to notice when children become maybe more irritable or more irresponsible or more socially isolated and decide to withdraw from peers or withdraw from family, or potentially maybe have some more talk back to parents than they used to. And what you're noticing there is what an addictive tendency will create, behavioral change.
Can you speak to us a little bit about what are the, for like school age children and above and beyond, like what are some of the downfalls of being on the screens all the time? So you told us about the blue light and the irritability, but what are some other things by just spending too much time on the screens? Because you're going to have parents who say, well, they're learning and they're having fun, but there's going to be some disadvantages for sure.
Sure. There are several, and for different children, it's different things because, it's a human body and human bodies respond differently. But in addition to what you just mentioned, what a lot of parents are telling me, and I interview parents constantly. I just finished a book actually called Hooked on Screens, and I did a lot of parent interviews for that. That'll be coming out in February.
Awesome. Yay.
You can get it now on Amazon and for 99 cents. Right now.
I'll put a link below. I'll go put a link. That's awesome.
But there's a lot of great information. But what I, through my interviews, what I'm noticing is parents are saying to me, it's not just the problem of when they're on screens, but not being able to get them off. And then the longer that they're on, the harder it is to get them off. Like, so let's say you had a half an hour, the child was on for half an hour. You'd have a certain level of difficulty having them shut it down. But if you give them an hour, you're going to have an even harder level of difficulty shutting it down because of the time commitment that they've put into it and the responsiveness to that time. And then also what they're saying is that after they shut it down, after about an hour, or if it's 2 hours or 3 hours, their irritability increases. Their irresponsible behavior increases. So it's almost like a ratio of, time increase on screens creates problem increase at home. And the thing that I like to work with parents and parents who work closely with me, we work on what is your child missing out on when he or she is on screen. So if you think about life before screens, kids read. Kids went outside, they shoot basketball hoops, right?
Human connection and interaction.
Yeah, or even just learning how to be okay alone, So there's that human connection. So they played with friends outside. They called up a friend and they said, hey, you want to meet me in the park and we'll shoot some hoops? Or, as younger girls, we used to play hopscotch and jump rope and, all of these jacks and these fun games that we didn't need any kind of technology to have a good time. And now kids can't do that anymore. They're so reliant on the screen that even when they are with a friend, many times they're not even talking. Like you'll see two teen girls or so in the backseat of a car and they're texting each other, sitting right next to each other.
Oh my goodness. And one of the things my 8-year-old will do is, hey mom, will you text so-and-so's mom and ask if she can play? And I say, oh, she lives 5 houses down. You can walk down there and you can knock on the door and you can ask her if she can play.
So old school.
No, let's learn some human interaction
and social skills.
And that's the biggest takeaway I took from reading Wired just a couple weeks ago. I read it. That was the biggest thing for me, was the lack of human connection and how socially inadequate our children are becoming because they're not having the chance to communicate with others.
And
So that was a big takeaway for me.
Yeah, you're so right. And the problem is that kids don't know differently. So they think they are. They think by texting, they're socializing. They think by being on Snapchat, they're socializing. They think by being on video games and playing a video game with somebody in another country, they're being social. But clearly, those of us who lived life before technology or before this kind of technology, obviously know the difference between the two. And we're seeing a huge loss in the ability to communicate, not only verbally communicate, make eye contact with others, learn how to make eye contact with an adult, shake hands, introduce yourself. Those kinds of skills are lost, but also communicating between peers, learning how to solve problems together, right? You have to have problems to be able to solve them together. If you don't play those games, right? If you don't play board games and card games and hopscotch and jump rope and all those kinds of things that create sometimes the problems between kids, not light problems, right? Like having a fight with each other, an argument of sorts. And then you have to come to agreement and you have to get along and you have to learn how to socialize. And if you don't have opportunities to do that, you lose out on.
And then the problems are turning up on social media, and then they're becoming really big because they haven't had the experience and the tools to problem solve and have conflict resolution with face-to-face interaction. So we're seeing a lot of disadvantages of too much screen time. And what I love about your talk is you kind of give us the research, you talk about the disadvantages, and now you're going to enlighten us with what we can do as parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
And educators as well, if any educators are listening.
For sure. In fact, I do work closely with teachers and principals of buildings too, trying to help them push this information out to parents on what you can do. And chapter 7 of my book there is all about monitoring and setting boundaries around screen time. And so those two things are not the same, but they go very hand in hand. So I'll talk about both of those. And, it's easier to start when the kids are younger, because they're more apt to listen to you. But I recommend highly that even if you have children who are 12, 13, 14, 16, you don't say it's too late. And you do what you can to try to monitor and set boundaries around screen time where you are. Monitoring screens is just really paying attention to what your child is on and ensuring that and the child knows where you draw the limits about what experiences they should be having online and what experiences should be off limits for them at a certain age. So there may be certain apps that you approve of and other ones that you don't approve of your child, and you should have an agreement about that. There may be there may be videos on YouTube. YouTube now has parental controls you can lock down so that you can ensure that there are things that your child may watch, because YouTube is really popular with kids these days. They love to watch videos. And then ones that you don't want them to watch. And same thing with video games, right? There's a lot of violence in video games. Some video games are sort of harmless, like Tetris. You would argue that just putting shapes into boxes and so on. It's a lot less harmful than a game like Minecraft or World of Warcraft, which starts to tend to up in the violence level. So really monitoring it. And I'm very big also on screen use, especially under the high school age, for kids to be in parental view at all times. So there should never be alone in a bedroom on an iPad with full access to a screen under the age of, let's say, 14, without you being able to see it. And a child should know. And honestly, parents are telling me that actually is very comforting to most kids, that you're watching, you're there, you know what's going on, you know what they're on, and you set some boundaries around that. So I
like being able to hear it. So sometimes, because we have 3 kids, if they're all having their screen time at the same time, and we're, 2 are on the iPad, one's watching a show, and we have a very small home, and the respect that like our common spaces is tight. Like we're all together all the time. The living space is, elsewhere, but it's a big common space. And I want the volume, because as I'm cooking dinner, I can't see the screen, but I want to hear. And oftentimes, okay, it's enough watching people open toys. Let's try something else. Like,
right.
You're going to use your whole 30 minutes to watch this lady open toys. Try something else.
Right, that's perfect. Yeah, I don't agree with these for kids if you can avoid it, unless you have absolute control over what these are being used for in the moment. Yeah. So, so that's monitoring. And there's a lot of software products out there that you can check out. You can Google them. They're also in my resources section of my book about what kinds will monitor your actual devices, and which ones will monitor your incoming internet completely. And you can shut your internet right down if you want to at a certain hour. So like no more screens after 9 p.m., but your teenager's up in the bedroom. You're not quite sure what he or she is doing. You can actually shut the whole internet down.
That's great. Hit the button. Time up. So this is monitoring. What's the difference between that and boundaries?
Yeah. So setting boundaries would be really starting with conversations with your kids as young as you feel they are able, which I would say is even to the age of 4 or 5, around what we agree upon is appropriate in our household for screen time. So, and what we should be doing when we're not. So I'll talk about reading for a little bit too, but boundaries would be, for example, if you like the 1 hour a night rule, then that's a boundary that you have. And your child would need to be able to help self-monitor with the parent. Okay, we're going to be on between 6 and 7 p.m. We're going, we have dinner from 5 to 6, let's say, from 6 to 7 is screen time, and you've had to have done your homework first. So those are some boundaries that you're setting, right? You're saying that homework comes first, or maybe it's play outside if it's nice out, right? So I think healthy outdoor activity is really important too. And one boundary you might set is you can't be on screens until you've had an opportunity to de-stress, run around outside, socialize with friends. Have dinner, set the table, and then you get 1 hour of screen time. That would be a boundary. Another boundary might be something like, we don't use certain apps in this house. So the monitoring would be, I'm watching which apps you are using, but a boundary would be, we don't use these. Another boundary might be something like, and I love this one, this was a parent recommendation to me, that I'm going to put, it's okay if you want to be on Instagram, but you can't have it on your personal device. We're going to keep it on mom's iPad. That way, you're not going to be distracted when you're doing homework and you're up in your room, as a high school kid, let's say, up in your room.
That is a great suggestion.
Yeah, but you're not saying they can't be part of what's going on with their friends, and so you're not completely removing them from the opportunity, making them feel isolated amongst their peers, but it's not on their device, so that when they're doing homework or you're not around, you can't monitor it the way you'd like to.
I've never heard that suggestion, and that is beautiful. That is really a good one, because that's what I'm hearing from parents is the kickback, where if they're setting too strict of boundaries, their children are fighting back and saying, well, I'm not connected to my friends. But I love that, because it's limited.
Yep, it's great. And honestly, the parent who recommended that to me said that as soon as she mentioned it to her daughter took it off her phone, put it on mom's iPad, and was all about it. She felt
no questions asked. Okay.
She felt good that there was a boundary for her set, because I think, as kids often do, they like the technology, and they even like the socialization with the apps that they think they're socializing, but they even realize that sometimes it's overwhelming for them.
Yes. And as an adult, think about us as an adult too. I mean, my husband and I know screens at the dinner table, but recently we've been putting them, he comes in from work, we put our phones in the drawer and we don't touch them again until the kids are in bed, because we don't want the kids seeing us like this. Right. We want the kids to know that our eyes are on them. We love them more than our phone. Parenting Magazine came out with a study that they surveyed all of these children, and it was over 50% of children said their parents liked their phone more than they liked them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think parents are trying to give that message.
No, we're not. But it's addicting. It is like you hear a ding and all of a sudden you want to, I've taken all the dings off my phone. Yeah. So because it is like, I think all the notifications, because I feel I'm like a responder and I want to respond immediately, but you don't need to respond to everything. Like my meditation app, if it's giving me a notification, I don't need to be reading it while I'm eating dinner with my kids.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I think, I focus on children, but I have so much to say about parent addiction too, and what parents are actually modeling for their kids. And I don't believe that parents are trying to say, I feel my phone is more important than you are, but I think it's just become our life.
It's the message that we give off. We're not trying to do that.
We're not. Absolutely. And so I like to flip it and say, why don't we give up a message of reading is important? Let's walk around with a book instead, like a real hard copy, hardback or paperback book, not a Nook or a Kindle. That actually looks like you're on a screen. So even if you're reading a book, it's still to kids. They still think you're on a screen. So I like the actual paper copy or magazines. I have a lot to say about that too. I know we're short on time, but I'm happy.
We are, but I think your suggestions at the end are really powerful and for parents. And I don't want to say that this is the end, because Dr. Carroll, you have a new book coming out. I actually linked to it below. And you're also giving us a free resource. The quiz, Is Your Child Addicted to Screens? Would you like to share any other resources that you have to offer?
Sure. I want to say a little bit about the quiz too. The quiz isn't really just for parents who feel that their child may be addicted to screens. It should be for every parent to actually see some of the telltale signs of addiction and pre-addiction, so that even if you say to yourself, no, my child's fine, they really know when to get off the screen, and they know that after an hour they're good, I would say open it up and check it out anyway, because there are levels of addiction as you move toward it, and it happens very covertly. Sometimes a child is fine, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and all of a sudden they hit middle school and boom, they like sink right down into that, the black hole of screen addiction or pre-addiction, where they're fighting the battle of trying not to want to be on screen so much. So it's really helpful to just, get the resource. You'll always have it, and you'll be able to see what some of those signs are that are indicators of maybe we need to put some tighter boundaries around this at home.
This is excellent. And I, just from reading a recent book, I do want people to know that, I have young children. So I just think, oh, well, what's the harm? We have limits, so an hour a day, and that's for all 3 children. It's never changed. They weren't allowed before 2. I'm very passionate about those rules because I've done a lot of reading. But please look outside of your season in parenting, because what I've learned is that this can cause really bad depression, suicidal thoughts in older children when their parents take away the screens. It's like they feel like they've lost something. So
it's also because of the way the brain responds to that. So the brain research behind that is not it's exactly what you're saying. It's an emotional, but it's also a mental reaction that is not able to be controlled unless you do something before it happens.
Yeah. So those of you tuning in, if you think, oh, well, Dr. Carroll and Maria, they just have, they have some boundaries on monitoring their kids. No, this is serious stuff. And I do think that we as parents and educators do need to look at the research and say, what can we do to help our children at an early age so that those routines are set in place?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I know that this is
fast.
It did go fast. I know, but the good news is you have a book with a lot more information that people can reach out and learn more. So thank you so much. We're going to say goodbye now.
Chatting with you. Bye now.